The desert was endless, a wasteland of light and heat, where even the air seemed to burn, and the sky trembled like glass. She walked through it because there was nothing else to do. Her ship torn open by the storm, her water almost gone, her throat cracked and raw with every breath. She had stopped counting the hours, she had stopped caring if she made it to the next rise. She only walked because movement meant she was still alive, and standing still meant she was not, she thought. She heard the wind at first, the sharp cry rising and breaking again. She turned, slow, her boots sinking into the dust. The sound came again, high, desperate, and too small for a storm. It was not the voice of anything. She knew she followed it anyway because silence had grown too heavy to bear. The dunes rose and fell like sleeping beasts, and the sun pressed down until her vision blurred, and still she followed the sound until she saw it half buried. In a ditch of red sand lay something alive and trembling. She knelt, the heat rolling from the ground like breath. The creature was small, no larger than a child, its body covered in fine scales that shimmered faintly like wet stone, its limbs shaking in weak spasms, its eyes two wide orbs reflecting the light. It hissed when she reached for it, a sound not of threat but fear, its voice cracking dry and brittle. She could see the cuts along its ribs, the faint traces of blood that was not red. She said soft words, though the air tore them apart, her voice barely more than a whisper. She said, "It is all right, little one, I will not hurt you." And she reached again. The creature struck out feebly, claws scraping the fabric of her sleeve, leaving a thin tear. She saw the pulse in its throat, fast, wild. She thought of leaving it. She thought of how little water she had, but when she saw its chest heaving shallow and fast, she could not move. Away she lifted it with both arms, its weight lighter than she expected, its body hot and trembling. It tried to resist once, then went limp as if the fight had drained out of it. She wrapped it in her jacket, the fabric damp with her sweat, the sun still burning her skin. Raw, she carried it against her chest and began to walk again, her legs shaking, the wind rising behind her like a scream. The storm came back without warning. The sky turned black and the sand rose in walls she could barely see. Her own hands, she bent low, shielding the creature with her body, each step a battle against the wind. She could feel the sting of sand against her face, the taste of iron on her tongue. She thought she might fall, but the creature made a sound, a soft, broken sound that somehow kept her moving. She whispered to it, "You will live, you must," and though it could not understand it, pressed closer against her heartbeat. When the storm broke, the light returned pale and cruel. She fell to her knees, the creature still in her arms, breathing faintly, its small claws tangled in her hair. She looked down at it, her body shaking with exhaustion, and something else, something that felt like purpose. She did not know what it was or what she had just chosen, only that she could not let it die, not here, not while she still breathed. The sun hung low and burning across the horizon, and she did not move for long minutes. She only held the small creature against her chest, feeling its shallow breaths, her own heart pounding in rhythm with its tiny, frightened pulse. The sand around her burned through her clothes, through her skin, and still she did not care. She could feel its body trembling against hers, as if it knew she was the only thing keeping it from nothing. At AL she searched the wreckage of her ship, the metal twisted like melted glass, the panels bent and ripped in impossible angles. She dug with bare hands and tore at the broken circuits, hoping to find something, anything, that could help the small alien survive. She found water first, a single bottle, warm and heavy. She poured it carefully onto her own lips, then tilted the cub into her lap, letting it sip shallowly, its tongue brushing her fingers. Strange, soft and wet, the taste of it lingered in her mind as if it had meaning. She did not understand. The cub whimpered when she tried to set it down. For a moment it resisted, small claws digging into her jacket. She whispered, "Hush, little one, it is safe. Now it is all right," and its body relaxed slightly. The sound of its breathing filled the empty desert air, and for the first time she felt a strange kind of warmth she had not known since leaving her home. She moved, slowly gathering scraps from the wreckage, cloth and wires twisted into blankets and restraints. She made a nest of sorts, small and careful, so the creature could rest. Night came quickly, the desert, cold now, cutting through the thin layers. She wrapped the cub closer still against her chest. She shivered, but the small warmth in her arms burned brighter than any fire she could make with sparks. The stars blinked down silently, unfamiliar constellations, tracing strange patterns across the sky. She whispered names to them because she did not know their language, and the cub whimpered softly and twitched under her hands as if understanding somehow. She stroked the soft scales along its head, marveling at the sharp intelligence that glimmered in those wide, dark eyes. She stayed awake most of the night, watching it breathe and trying to remember what had brought her here, what had made her brave the storm. What had made her reach down into the dust and scoop the fragile life from death? She did not have answers, only a quiet certainty that she could not leave it, that she could not let it die. The desert stretched on forever around them, and she felt smaller than she had ever felt, yet stronger than she had ever known. Morning came with a pale light washing over the broken ship in the sand, and she had made small plans. She would find food, she would find shelter, she would find a way to heal the tiny body in her arms. She could not fail. It could not leave it to the storm, to the desert, to the creatures that hunted in silence. Her hands shook as she fed it scraps of protein she found in the wreckage and water. She coaxed it to drink it, struggled at first, but then licked at her fingers, with a sound somewhere between fear and trust. By midday, the cub nestled against her shoulder, its head heavy and limp. She let it rest there, and for the first time, she felt the bond tighten, the fragile invisible thread that tied her to this strange creature that could not speak, and yet was speaking in every small motion, every shiver, every blink of those dark eyes. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew she would not leave it. She would carry it through the desert. She would carry it through the desert. She would carry it through storms. She would carry it through anything, because she had chosen, and once chosen there was no turning back. The desert stretched endlessly before her, rolling dunes like waves frozen in heat and dust. She moved slowly, careful not to trip, careful not to jostle the cub that slept against her shoulder, its breathing shallow and even now more steady than before. She felt the small rise and fall of its chest, as if it had begun to trust that she would not let the world crush it again. She scouted the horizon for any sign of life or shelter, her eyes stinging from the glare, the sand burning against her skin. She spotted a cluster of jagged rocks, far off like ancient teeth sticking out of the desert floor. She adjusted the cub in her arms, making sure its head rested gently against her collarbone, and started toward the rocks, each step a struggle against the shifting sand that threatened to swallow her boots. She felt every muscle in her legs screaming, but the cub stirred and she could not stop. The cub twitched and let out a soft chittering sound, a sound that made her heart lurch. She lowered her head close to it, whispering, "Hush, it's okay, I am here, I am not leaving." And for a moment the desert fell away. She felt nothing but the warmth of the small body pressed to hers, the pulse against her own heartbeat, and something unfamiliar stirred deep in her chest, a feeling she did not yet have a name for, but recognized in the quiet like a memory of something long lost. The rocks offered shade, and a moment of relief. She laid the cub carefully on a flat slab and crouched beside it, scavenged bits of food from her supplies, and from the wreckage, protein cubes, dried fruits, and small nutrient gels. She offered them to the cub, who sniffed them cautiously. Before nibbling with tiny teeth, she watched, fascinated, the way its eyes followed her every movement, like it was learning, like it was already beginning to understand her. Without words, she tended to its scratches with the small med kit she had managed to salvage, wrapping torn strips of cloth around its limbs, cleaning the cuts that had begun to scab. The small creature watched her silently, blinking slowly, its dark eyes fixed on hers as if memorizing every motion. She wondered if it knew she had saved it. She wondered if it remembered the fear, the cold, the storm, the moments before she had reached down into the sand and pulled it from the edge of nothing. Night fell fast, and with it came a chill that wrapped around her like steel. She wrapped the cub close against her chest again, letting it nestle under her chin, and for the first time she allowed herself to think. Beyond survival, she thought of names, she thought of stories. She whispered soft nonsense words she thought the cub would not understand, and yet it listened, eyes half closed, head resting heavy against her shoulder. It was not asleep fully, but not awake. It was present with her in the desert, in the silence, in the space between heartbeats. The stars returned, overhead constellations alien to her eyes, but somehow comforting. She traced their shapes with her finger, wishing she could remember the cub's world, the place it had come from, the life it had lost. She pressed a hand against its small body and whispered, "I will keep you alive. I will carry you to wherever you belong." And even though it could not speak, it made a small sound of agreement, a tiny vibration against her chest that made her stomach twist with a strange and powerful emotion. She stayed awake most of the night, watching it, breathing in sync with her own pulse, waiting for the first light of dawn to continue the long march across the desert. She felt the bond growing stronger with every step, with every whispered word, with every small trust earned. The cub moved slightly against her arm, and she knew even then that neither of them would ever be the same again. The desert changed as they moved the dunes, giving way to jagged cliffs, the wind rising sharp and dry, carrying a taste of something alive and dangerous. She kept the cub close, its small body pressed against her chest, each twitch of its claws or flick of its tail alerting her to the vibrations Beneath the sand, she had begun to notice things she would have ignored before the way. Shadows moved against the light, the faintest crunch of something walking just beyond sight, the subtle changes in the air that whispered of predators waiting. She thought she had seen nothing when the shadows shifted suddenly, shapes like crouched figures' eyes, glinting in the dim afternoon sun. She froze, her boots sinking into loose gravel. The cub stirred, pressing its head closer into her shoulder, a low hiss rolling through its small body. She felt the warning in its spine, in its claws, in the way it flexed its tail. She followed its lead instinctively, scanning the terrain, heart hammering. She whispered, "Stay calm, little one. We are together." And yet the sound of movement around them made her blood run cold. Suddenly, a sand scorpion the size of a small dog lunged from the rocks, snapping its claws. She reacted before thinking, scooping the cub to safety, twisting and dodging the snapping pincers. The desert sand flew around her, hitting her face, stinging. Her eyes, she pressed the cub to her chest, keeping it from the creature, its tail flicking. An alarm, a strange protective instinct she had not known it possessed until that moment. It was alive, not just alive, but aware and ready. The scorpion lashed again, its claws clicking like stone on stone. She kicked at it, rolling it aside and scrambling to a higher slab of rock where she could shield the cub behind her. She watched it scuttle back into the crevices, and the cub twitched, its small head lifting, eyes wide, alert, as if it had understood danger before she had seen it. It made a soft, chittering sound, almost like laughter or relief. She patted its head, murmuring, good job, little one. Your senses are sharper than mine." And the cub pressed closer to her, warmth radiating like a pulse. Night fell fast after the encounter, and the desert became silent except for the distant howl of something she could not see. The cub had moved to rest against her shoulder, its tiny body still trembling from the adrenaline. It had not understood. She rubbed its back, murmuring, calm. "It is safe now. We survived. We are alive." And she felt a strange pride swelling in her chest, not just for herself, but for the creature that clung to her, as if they were one being, sharing breaths and heartbeats. She wondered how long it had been since it had known trust or safety or warmth. It had survived storms, creatures, hunger, and still it had survived. Now it had survived her, and a small flicker of something unnameable rose in her chest. Something like hope, like belonging. She held it through the long, cold night, tracing patterns across its scales with her fingers, whispering stories it could not understand, but listening anyway. By dawn, the desert seemed less hostile, the cliffs less imposing. The cub's small body relaxed slightly, as if it knew they had passed the first trial together. She looked down at it, her heart swelling with something stronger than fear or exhaustion, something that felt like purpose, and she whispered, "We keep moving, little one. We keep moving." And it twitched its ears at her as if agreeing, and together they stepped forward into the endless dunes, ready for whatever came next. The morning air was cooler but sharp with the taste of stone and metal. She scanned the horizon, the dunes giving way to distant structures half buried in sand towers that rose like broken teeth against the pale sky. She did not know what civilization might remain here, if any, but the cub stirred in her arms, twitching its head toward the far shapes, and she felt the pull of instinct. She did not understand a silent warning carried on the wind as they drew closer. The structures became more defined, walls etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the morning light. The cub pressed against her shoulder, its claws flexing in anticipation. She whispered, "Easy, easy, little one. We do not know what waits." And she felt the weight of her own fear settling in her chest, every step careful, every movement deliberate, the sands soft under her boots, and yet she moved as if the ground might swallow them whole. They passed through an archway carved from black stone, cracked and worn by time, and the cub stiffened suddenly, its eyes narrowing at a flicker of movement. In the shadows she followed its gaze and froze. A small patrol of alien guards moved silently across the courtyard, their armor glinting in the light. They had not seen her yet, but she could feel the tension in the cub. Its body pressed close and rigid. It hissed softly, almost inaudibly, and she murmured, "It is okay. Stay calm, little one. They do not know us yet." The courtyard opened into a plaza, the ground covered in mosaic patterns. She had no way of reading the language etched in the stone, but she felt the history in it, the weight of laws and life bound to the shapes. Beneath her boots she pressed the cub closer, holding it tightly, and felt the pulse of its heartbeat racing in sync with her own. She whispered, "We will pass through, we will be safe." And it twitched ears at her, as if acknowledging the plan. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows. Taller than any human, the armor and robes of command flowing like liquid metal. It stopped and studied her carefully, and the cub growled low in its throat, pressing closer to her chest. She held her breath, trying to look smaller, trying to appear harmless. She did not know what would happen if the figure spoke or gestured. She only knew that the cub sensed danger and she could not fail to protect it. The figure raised a hand slowly, a signal of pause or greeting. She did not know which. The plaza seemed to hold its breath, and she felt the cub shift her shoulder, small claws brushing against her neck. She whispered, "Easy, we can do this. We only walk," and the figure moved aside a single step, then another, leaving a path open through the plaza. The cub let out a soft chirp of relief, and she breathed carefully, letting her steps flow naturally, following the path. At the far end of the plaza, they came to a set of doors carved from black stone. The cub pressed its small head against her shoulder, and she murmured almost silently, "We are close, little one, safe now," and the doors opened easily at her touch, revealing a hallway lined with more glowing symbols. The air was cool here, quieter, safer. The cub relaxed slightly, shifting to nest against her chest. She ran a hand over its scales, murmuring softly, "All right, we are inside. We survived the first tests, and together we will find a place to rest." She looked down at it, its dark eyes wide and intelligent, and she thought for the first time how small it had been when she found it, how fragile and scared. And now it had grown into something alert and aware, and she whispered, "I will keep you alive, I promise." And the cub chirped softly, almost like it understood, and together they moved forward into the cool hall of unknown safety. The hallway stretched before her, long and silent, glowing symbols pulsing faintly along the walls. The cub pressed its small body closer against her shoulder, its claws flexing, and she could feel its awareness heightening, as if it sensed something she could not. The air smelled faintly metallic and sweet, and she realized that every step echoed softly, revealing their presence to anyone who might be listening. She whispered, "Easy, little one, stay close," and it chirped softly, responding to her voices. They moved deeper. The walls opened into a grand chamber, the ceiling high and carved with shapes that seemed to twist and move in the glow. The cub stiffened instantly, pressing against her chest, and she followed its gaze. A group of figures had appeared along the far side, robes flowing, metallic armor clinking softly with movement. They watched silently, their eyes sharp and calculating. She felt a weight pressing against her chest like gravity. She whispered, "Calm, little one, we are together." One figure stepped forward, taller than the others, eyes like molten stone fixed on her. The cub hissed low in her ear, claws digging lightly into her sleeve. She held it closer, murmuring, "It is okay, we do not fight yet, we only walk." And the figure spoke words she did not understand, a sound sharp and commanding, but there was something familiar in it, something in the rhythm like a memory long forgotten. Her pulse spiked. She realized the cub recognized it, attention radiating off its small body. The figure gestured, and two smaller ones approached, bringing a pedestal carved from black stone. The cub twitched and pressed closer, its small tail wrapping around her arm. She whispered, "Stay calm, we will survive this together." And the figures placed a glowing object on the pedestal, a crystal humming, softly vibrating with energy. It cast light across the chamber. The cub let out a low sound, almost like recognition, and she realized instinctively that this was a legal object, a binding artifact of some kind, that carried power beyond anything she could comprehend. The cub growled softly in warning, its eyes fixed on the tallest figure, and she could feel the small pulse of intelligence. Like a wave against her chest, it understood more than she could see. It had survived storms, predators, hunger, but this was different. This was law and claim, and it did not like it. The figure spoke again, words she could not understand, gestures sweeping toward her chest as if demanding something she could not give yet. The cub hissed louder, pressing its head into her neck. She whispered, soft, almost trembling, "Little one, I do not know what they want, I do not know their rules, but I will not let them take you." She felt the cub press tighter against her heart, clawing gently into her sleeve as if confirming her promise. It shifted its weight, resting one small paw against her hand, and she knew it trusted her absolutely. Even if she did not understand the law, she understood its meaning. The figures studied them both for long moments. The tallest one moved closer, raising the pedestal higher, its eyes narrowing. She felt a shiver run through her body. The cub twitched ears and tail, its small claws flexing. She whispered, "Hold on, little one, we are together, we will face whatever comes." And in that instant, the connection between them deepened, a bond of survival, trust, and something else she did not yet have a name for, a bond that would defy law and threat, and whatever future was waiting for them. The chamber seemed to hold its breath as they waited for her response, and the cub chirped softly, pressing its head into her shoulder. And she realized they were not alone in this. She had an ally, small and fragile and fierce, and together they would face the unknown, no matter the cost. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened silently, and he stepped through, tall, broader than anyone she had ever seen, the armor gleaming black with gold trim, the lines sharp and regal, his eyes fixed on her, dark, molten, and unyielding. The cub stiffened, instantly pressing its small body tighter against her chest, claws flexing as if it could sense what was coming before she did. She whispered, "Calm, little one. Do not be afraid," and it chirped softly, pressed closer still. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, his gaze never leaving hers. She felt the weight of his presence pressing into her like the heat of a sun she had no right to touch, yet could not look away. He stopped a few meters away and bowed slightly, a gesture not of but of acknowledgement. The cub let out a low growl warning, and she instinctively pressed her hand against its small head, murmuring, "It is okay, little one. I am here. I will protect you." His voice came, then soft but sharp, the words foreign, but the tone carried meaning. It carried claim and memory, and the cub hissed sharply, pressing its head under her chin, claws brushing lightly against her shoulder. She held it tighter, murmuring, "Stay calm, little one. Stay with me. We do not yield." And she felt the small pulse of intelligence in its chest respond to hers, a silent communication of trust and determination. He lifted a hand slowly, the movement deliberate and ceremonial. The cub stiffened, its tail curling around her arm. She whispered, "Easy, little one. We faced this together." And the moments stretched long, the air heavy with anticipation. The figures in the chamber stood silent, waiting for what would happen next. The crystal on the pedestal pulsed faintly, as if echoing the tension that radiated between them. He spoke again, words faster now, urgent, insistent. The cub chirped in response, shifting slightly against her shoulder, her heart hammering. She whispered, "I do not understand their words, but I understand your meaning. Hold on, we are together." And it twitched, ears and tail pressing tiny claws against her chest in agreement. It understood the danger, the claim, the power of the adult standing before them, and it chose to trust her fully. He circled slowly, maintaining distance, his eyes studying her every move. The cub made a low, trilling sound, almost a challenge, and she pressed her lips to its small head, murmuring, "You are brave, little one. So brave. We face this as one." She felt the bond tighten, the invisible thread linking them, stronger than fear, stronger than threat, stronger than law. It pulsed in the air, as tangible as breath. The cub shifted suddenly, letting out a sharp chirp, a warning, and she felt the heat of adrenaline spike through her body. It was not just instinct anymore. It was intelligence combined with loyalty, and she realized then that they were more than rescuer and rescued. They were partners in survival, allies in defiance. She whispered soft, "We will not yield, little one. We face him together." And it pressed its head to hers, almost an affirmation. He stopped and studied them both, longer than felt natural. The room seemed to hold its breath, the crystal pulsing faintly, the cub chirping softly, pressing its weight against her shoulder, and she felt a strange and powerful surge of courage. She did not need to understand the law or the words or the claim. She only needed to feel the trust and loyalty, and she whispered, "Stay close, little one. We are unbroken, and together we are stronger than him, than any law, than any threat." The chamber seemed to shrink around them, the air thick with anticipation, and the cub pressed tighter against her chest, claws flexing, its tail twitching as if it could sense every shift in the adult alien's posture. She whispered, "Soft, little one. Stay close. We face this together." And it chirped low in response, pressing its small head against her collarbone, as if giving her courage in return. He stepped closer now, the weight of his presence undeniable, the crystal on the pedestal pulsing faintly, casting light across his angular features, and she felt her pulse race, not with fear but with a strange exhilaration. The cub hissed sharply, letting out a sound that was warning and defiance all at once, and she murmured, "Easy, easy, little one. I see you, I feel you, we are together." And it pressed against her hand, responding with the tiniest pressure of its paw. The words he spoke came fast and insistent. She did not understand the syllables, but the tone carried urgency and expectation. The cub twitched ears and tail, responding almost as if translating the meaning for her. She whispered, "Soft, calm, little one. We do not give in. We listen, but we choose our path." And it pressed its head into hers, confirming their silent pact, a bond stronger than the law, stronger than fear. He gestured sharply toward the pedestal, the crystal humming with energy. She felt the pull of authority and legacy. It was the weight of generations pressing down on them, and the cub let out a low trilling sound, pressing small claws against her chest as if reminding her they were not alone. She whispered, "Steady, little one. We hold together, we hold fast, and it pressed its head heavier into her shoulder, almost like a heartbeat in response to figures surrounding them shifted slightly, weighting the tension, stretching so tight she could feel it. In her bones the cub chirped again, softly pressing its tail along, her arms signaling readiness and awareness, and she felt a wave of pride mixed with dread. This small creature she had rescued had become more than a companion, it had become her shield, her partner in defiance, and she whispered soft, "I will not fail you, little one," and it made a tiny sound that was agreement and encouragement. Adult Alien studied them, both eyes narrowing. He spoke again, faster now, almost a growl. The cub hissed and pressed closer instinctively. Sensing danger in the cadence of the words, she held it tightly, murmuring, "Steady, little one, we are stronger than this. We are alive together," and it pressed its claws gently against her hand, signaling understanding and trust. Slowly, he paused, his gaze moving from her to the cub, and she realized. He saw the bond, he saw the loyalty and intelligence that radiated from this small creature that had grown beyond helplessness, and he said nothing for a long moment, the crystal pulsing as if aware of the tension. The cub chirped softly one last time, pressing against her chest, and she whispered, "Soft, little one, they understand us even if we do not," and it twitched ears and tail, confirming the silence stretched long, the weight of law and claim and survival hanging in the air, but she felt the connection tighten, the invisible thread binding them, stronger than any threat, and she knew whatever came next, they would face it together. The cub pressed its head heavier against hers, claws flexing gently, and she whispered soft, "We are unbroken, little one, together unbroken." The crystal pulsed softly between them, the air thick with tension, and she felt the cub shift against her chest, claws flexing, tiny tail twitching, as if it knew the moment had come. She whispered, "Soft, little one, we are ready together," and it pressed its head harder against hers, a small warm pulse of trust and courage. He stepped closer, the weight of authority radiating from him, the chamber silent except for the low hum of the crystal and the cub's soft trills. She felt the history and law pressing in, every symbol on the walls, every etched line glowing faintly in the dim light she held. The cub tighter, murmuring, "We face this as one, little one. We will not break," and it chirped in response, pressing its small paw against her hand. Suddenly, he gestured sharply at command, and the cub hissed sharply, leaping slightly against her shoulder, claws brushing lightly against her neck. She murmured, "Easy, little one. We hold, we do not strike, we show our strength in other ways," and it twitched ears, pressing closer, still there, bond a shield stronger than fear or authority. He spoke words fast, insistent. The cub tilted its head, listening, and she realized for the first time it was responding not just instinctively but with understanding, small chirps and trills translating the tension and meaning between them. It pressed its head against her chest, claws flexing lightly, as if to say, "We are together and nothing can separate us." She whispered soft, "I see you, little one, I feel you, we are one," and it pressed heavier against her shoulder, confirming. He paused a moment, studying the two of them, the crystal pulsing faintly, as if sensing the tension and the bond, and she felt something shift, the air lighter just slightly. The cub chirped again, soft and long, pressing its tiny body fully against hers. She whispered, "Soft, little one, they understand our choice. Our bond is not law, it is trust, it is survival, it is life," and it twitched its tail, a tiny flick of agreement. The tall figure finally spoke again, slower this time, the cadence deliberate and measured. She could not understand the words, but the tone had changed. It was not demand anymore, it was acknowledgement. He stepped back slightly, bowing his head in a gesture she could only guess meant recognition, and the cub chirped softly, pressing its head to hers, and she whispered, "Gentle little one, we did it, we stood, and they see you." Esta figures in the chamber shifted, moving aside, the crystal pulsing slowly. The cub nestled fully against her chest, curling tiny paws around her hand. She felt the warmth and intelligence radiating from it, and whispered soft, "We are safe, little one, safe together, always together," and it responded with a long, soft trill, pressing against her heartbeat. For the first time she could breathe, the weight of survival and law lifting just slightly. The cub stirred in her arms, blinking slowly, dark eyes trusting and bright, and she whispered softly, "We are unbroken, little one, nothing can take this from us," and it made a small chirp of agreement, pressing its head to her shoulder, the bond solid, unyielding, alive. They walked slowly from the chamber together, the crystal behind them glowing faintly like a witness. The cub nestled against her shoulder, aware and intelligent, the adult alien silent but respectful, and she whispered, "Soft, little one, we face the future together, whatever comes. We are ready," and it chirped a long, soft sound, pressing fully into her chest, and she knew that they were unbroken together, stronger than law, stronger than fear, stronger than any threat.